We've had some interesting releases in the CPU cooler space recently, so I figured it was time to compare the best high-end options among air coolers. Howdy guys, Ponchato here, and today we'll be comparing 6 different enthusiast level CPU coolers, 2 of which are generally considered to be the highest performing air coolers available today. We'll be comparing several different aspects like installation, support, and of course, noise and cooling performance of these coolers. Thanks to each manufacturer for sending these out for review, and let's get started. Now the first thing to note is that these coolers share the same motherboard socket compatibility with AM4, LGA1151, and LGA2066, so they cover the vast majority of PCs being built today. Anyway, let's look at the lineup in no particular order. First is the Dark Rock 4 from Be Quiet, which is $75 US and is a single tower, single fan setup with 6 heat pipes. Second is the $90 Deepcool Assassin 3 with a dual fan, dual tower setup and 7 heat pipes. Third is from Noctua, their latest update of the NHD15, the D15 Chromax Black. It's $100, has a dual fan, dual tower setup, and 6 heat pipes. By the way, the D15 and the Assassin 3 are the big two that have a bit of a rivalry going. Fourth is another from Noctua, the $100 NHU12A, which is only a single tower, but equipped with Noctua's latest NF-A12x25 fans, which are pretty much the best performing 120mm fans on the market today. Fifth is from Scythe, the dual tower Fuma 2, which goes for only $60, tied for the cheapest here today. And last is the hulking Scythe Ninja 5, which is basically a giant cube of fins with 2 fans strapped on either side. The Ninja 5 also goes for $60. Okay, I lied, they were in alphabetical order. Anyway, these are the contestants, so let's look at how they compare. First, we'll look at installation. Sure, most people are only gonna do this once, but it is really nice when the cooler part of your build only takes like 4 minutes instead of 45. The typical cooler mounting method today is made up of support bars on either side of the CPU, which are screwed into the backplate. A crossbar goes over the base plate of the cooler and gets screwed into those support bars on the side, firmly holding the cooler to the CPU and motherboard. That's the basic setup. Every cooler we're looking at today does it like that, and the vast majority of air coolers available will also use some variation of that setup. Now that we have the background, we'll look at the details, starting with the Dark Rock 4. Installation with the Dark Rock 4 is, to be blunt, probably the worst one here. Granted, that's worst among some of the best options on the market, which comes out to decent but not great. My issue with the Dark Rock 4 is the crossbar is not attached to the cooler, and the screws used to attach the crossbar to the support bars are not captive. So you have to balance the bar in position over the base plate of the cooler while the cooler is just standing on the CPU, and also line up the screws and try to get them threaded while holding everything together and trying to keep it all lined up. It's certainly doable, and it's only a mild inconvenience, but it could be a lot better. The Assassin 3 is a step up in that the crossbar is permanently attached to the base plate of the cooler, and the screws are captive on that bar, so you can just set the cooler on the CPU, move the whole thing so the crossbar screws are lined up, and tighten it down. However, it uses its own backplate rather than the stock backplate, which adds hassle because you need to attach screws to the backplate in the correct holes before putting them through the motherboard. And then on top, it uses threaded spacers to first hold the backplate to the motherboard, then the support bars go on, then another set of threaded nuts goes on top to hold those in place. All in all, it is slightly better, but it still leaves a lot of room for improvement. Enter Noctua and Scythe, who both use nearly identical mounting systems and have been for a while. These are, in my experience, the best on the market because they are by far the easiest among aftermarket coolers. First, they all use the stock backplate, at least on AM4. That simplifies things. And second, they use a simple motherboard side of a spacer, support bars, and screws. This is about as simple as it can get, and it allows the motherboard portion of the mounting system to be set up in usually under a minute. Finally, the crossbar with captive screws is permanently attached to the cooler base, so the last step of attaching it to the motherboard is simply to line up the screws and tighten it down. No fiddling, no little parts to try and position while balancing the whole thing and holding a screwdriver. So the Fuma 2, Ninja 5, NHD15, and NHU12A end up in a 4-way tie for the best installation because their process is about as streamlined as it can get. Bet you didn't think someone could talk that in depth about the installation of CPU coolers. Anyway, moving on to the next category, support. This section is basically down to the company's history of socket support for older coolers and warranty length for the ones we're looking at today. In terms of warranty, Scythe takes the L with the Fuma 2 and Ninja 5 at only 2 years. Be Quiet's Dark Rock 4 is slightly longer at 3. The Assassin 3 from Deepcool is covered for 5 years, and Noctua leads with the NHU12A and the NHD15, both coming with 6-year manufacturer warranties. Air coolers tend to be extremely reliable, so warranty coverage is less important than in liquid coolers, but if you end up as one of those unlucky few and have something break, Noctua will have you covered the longest. In terms of adding support for new sockets to old coolers with upgrade kits, Noctua wins in an absolute landslide. They have a long history of supporting coolers that are, for all intents and purposes, ancient relics. For example, Noctua's AM4 upgrade kit is compatible with a long list of their coolers, but the two that stick out are the NH-U9 and NH-U12. The U9 and U12 were released in October of 2005. In 2005, Intel's Pentium 4 processors were still relevant and in active development. Some of you watching this were probably literally not alive when those coolers were released, and Noctua introduced kits to make them compatible with Ryzen processors. The reason they can do this is that they've used a nearly identical mounting setup on most of their product lines for pretty much their entire company history. Many other companies switch things up every generation, but Noctua designed their coolers to be forward compatible from the beginning, allowing coolers from 2005 to be used on PCs built in 2020. So Noctua wins in support. Now we'll compare case and RAM compatibility of the different coolers. For case compatibility, the Assassin 3 and NHD15 are the worst offenders at a minimum height of 165 millimeters. Because their front fans hang over the RAM slots as well, if you have memory with tall heat spreaders, your case will need even more clearance to move the front fans up a bit. The same is true for the Dark Rock 4 and the Ninja 5, though they are a bit shorter at 159 and 155 millimeters respectively. On a similar note, the Assassin 3 and NHD15 are long enough front to back that their front fans will actually cover the 24-pin power socket on Mini ITX motherboards. For those two coolers, regardless of RAM height, if you're using them on a Mini ITX, you'll need to move the front fan up a bit to make room for that motherboard power connector. But the worst offender for this is the Ninja 5, which will actually reach the front edge of a micro ATX motherboard. The Assassin 3 and D15 are big, both are 161 millimeters front to back, but the Ninja 5 is almost 20 millimeters longer. It is seriously huge. The NH-U12A and Fuma 2 are the better options for size compatibility. Both are designed such that their front fans are completely behind the RAM slot, so you can have whatever height memory you want, and if you'll be using RGB RAM, you'll be able to see it. For motherboards with rear RAM slots, the U12A allows up to 42 millimeter tall modules, while the Fuma 2 allows memory up to 61. And at 158 millimeters tall, the U12A is slightly beat out by the Fuma 2's 155 millimeter height. That lower height combined with larger rear RAM clearance gives the Fuma 2 the overall best case compatibility of the group. Next, we'll talk about aesthetics. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of, as a reviewer, using these as a comparison metric for CPU coolers because it's so subjective, but we can at least talk about it a little bit. In my opinion, the NHD15 Chromax Black is the best looking cooler of the bunch. It's a huge, mean looking, all black cooler. I mean, it just looks cool. My second pick is the Assassin 3, which only falls short because of the uncolored fins and heat pipes. Can you tell I like dual tower coolers? Also, Noctua has kits for different colored rubber pads for the fans on the D15, so you can change the accents to red, yellow, blue, green, or white. Because of that and its stock appearance, the D15 wins in aesthetics. But now the core of the Roundup. Benchmarks. First, we'll look at the idle noise. High-end coolers tend to have wide PWM control ranges for their fans, so it's no surprise that each of these can run almost silently at idle. Even in a very quiet room, each of these coolers is completely inaudible from any more than a few inches away. Next up, idle temperature. These are the results from running the fans at their minimum RPM. Because the D15, Dark Rock 4, and U12A stop at 0%, their idle temps are much higher. My guess for the U12A being so much hotter is that the sides of its heatsink are almost completely sealed off with the fins folded down, so passive airflow is mostly blocked. The solution, if idle temps are a concern, just set the minimum speed to a few hundred RPM to keep the air moving. Now here's load noise at maximum RPM. There's a surprisingly wide variation in the group, with the Ninja 5 at only 33.9 decibels and the Assassin 3 in last at almost 52. The reason for the Ninja 5's huge lead here is its fans are limited to only 800 RPM. Compare that to the Fuma 2 at 1200, the Assassin 3 at 1400, and the U12A at a very fast 2000. It is interesting to note that despite the Assassin 3's fans being the same size and only 100 RPM faster than the D15, they are more than 3 decibels louder, and the U12A with Noctua's latest NFA 12x25 fans running at 2000 RPM is several decibels quieter. Basically, Noctua is very good at designing fans. Now here's my personal favorite graph of load temperature normalized to the same noise level of 40 decibels. In other words, it shows the efficiency of the coolers all running at a moderately loud volume. Here, performance is much closer. The Ninja 5 leads at 40.6, the Fuma 2 is right behind it, and even moving all the way down to the D15 and last is only 1.6 degrees Celsius behind first place. It should be noted though that the Ninja 5 data had to be extrapolated to 40 decibels because it's the only one that doesn't actually reach that noise level at all. But now the most important graph, low temperature. If all you care about is cooling power, here's your answer. All other metrics aside, the Assassin 3 is the best air cooler of this group and the best one I've reviewed to date. It's a little more than half a degree cooler than the U12A and more than a degree cooler than the D15. The Fuma 2 lands in the middle of the pack at 40.3 degrees above ambient, the Dark Rock 4 at 41, and the Ninja 5 falling pretty far behind at 44.5, again owing to its very low maximum speed of 800 RPM. One interesting thing to note here is that the two best performing coolers, the Assassin 3 and U12A, both have 7 heat pipes, while the rest of the group only have 6. I have a feeling we'll be seeing more coolers with 7 heat pipes as time goes on because they can simply move more heat. So there are the top dogs of air cooling in 2020 and what each one brings to the table. But which one should you buy? For the best value, it's no contest, the Scythe Fuma 2. It's significantly quieter at its maximum RPM than the NHD15, U12A, and Assassin 3 while being very close in temperature, very easy to install, and it has the best case and RAM compatibility with unlimited RAM clearance in the front. And it's also tied for the cheapest at only 60 bucks. In fact, the Fuma 2 is the cooler I'm using in my main PC right now. For the best cooling performance to handle ultra high-end CPUs and heavy overclocking, my recommendation goes to the Deepcool Assassin 3. It's a simple numbers game. The Assassin 3 is the strongest cooler here. When you're running a very hot, high-end overclocked system, those couple of degrees can make a big difference in your final overclock and ultimately performance. If you want the best of the best among air coolers, the Assassin 3 is it. And I will give an honorable mention to Noctua's NHU12A and D15 Chromax simply because Noctua supports their coolers for so long. If you reuse parts from build to build, picking either of those coolers will give you one that, if their company record is any indication, you'll be able to continue using until at least 2035 and probably beyond. For some people, that is a seriously good value proposition. As always, links to purchase these coolers are in the description below. Hit subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified of new videos as soon as they're up. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit subscribe. And I'm curious to hear from all of you. Which of these coolers do you think looks the best? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I hope I helped, and I'll see you in the next video. I was having a bit of a nostalgia trip going through PC news archives in 2006. Did any of you ever read Maximum PC? I remember when I first got into PCs around middle school, Maximum PC was like my go-to magazine. I loved reading that. Simpler times, and no RGB.